So I watched State of Play last night, and I gotta say I was actually pretty impressed. I know a lot of people seem to be kind of down on the event because of a lack of first-party titles, and I can understand that. We're gonna get into all that and more on today's video, but I have one simple request of you. If you like the content, consider commenting, rating, and subscribing. It does help out my channel a bit. I've had a couple really high-powered videos that increased my sub account pretty radically, and all I did was ask. So we're here to see if that's actually true or if maybe it was just a fluke. We'll find out. All right, so State of Play launched last night. I actually watched it on a car ride over to Disney. So I watched it mostly with the sound off, but I got a pretty good sense of the games that I saw. And then obviously throughout the workday today, I did spend some time looking through some of the comments, and it seems generally not favorable. I can understand that. There's a lot of big title games coming out this year. Sony first-party games that we want to know more about, like Wolverine, for example. Didn't see any of that. Instead, we got a pretty dense 45 or so minute look at some new games coming out, some unique to PlayStation, some will be cross-platform. And I think a lot of people have kind of expected State of Play to be more focused on first-party titles. That would make sense, right? You're thinking about games, you're thinking about like the Xbox Developer Direct, right? Up until recently, that was Xbox exclusive games. Nintendo Direct, for the most part, focused on Nintendo first-party titles. State of Play didn't really take that route, and I think a lot of people may have been soured on it because of that. But I'm not going to go through every single announcement. I just want to flag a few that really stood out to me because I think this was a good event, and it flowed pretty well, and there was definitely a lot of really cool hype things that we saw. The one that stands out to me first, and because it's in order, Borderlands 4. Borderlands 4 is going to be coming out on September 23rd. It looked to play much more dynamic than other Borderland games have in the past. Most Borderland games have been very limited in platforming. They have been sometimes driving heavy, always, walking and shooting heavy, but you really didn't get into that platform element. Most enemies were on a flat surface or on a gentle slope up or a gentle slope down. It turned into a numbers game at times as you're just kind of shooting at enemies, watching the health bar slowly whittle away. And the kind of oomph and action of the game wasn't really there. Borderlands 4 is a wild departure from that. A lot more action-based, a lot more fluid. I saw a grappling hook in there. I saw a lot more platforming in there. I'm excited. I think this is the real kick in the ass that the Borderlands franchise needed, and I am definitely invested in it, and I think it's going to be pretty darn cool. The only thing else I could say about Borderlands, obviously, it being cross-platform, right? So you have to keep in mind that this game will be available on Xbox, and maybe because Randy Pitchford kind of already let the cat out of the bag that Borderlands 4 was in fact happening, and we have seen some trailers and knew of the date and the announcement prior, maybe this trailer lost a little bit of oomph, but actually getting some gameplay involved and seeing some of the systems in action, I think, made it a pretty cool thing. Days Gone Remastered is one that I'm absolutely excited for. It doesn't come out until April 25th. I think that does them a disservice because that to me and to many others is probably an impulse buy. I would say for $10, it's going to get the Last of Us 2 kind of treatment of it's going to have some newer graphics. They're going to add in the Tempest 3D audio piece. They're going to add in some additional DualSense and some horde mode, photo mode, that kind of stuff. We'll get into all that later. I will be picking this up. Expect a full review when it does launch. I'll talk about it then. But I feel like this would have been something that would have been way better had we seen it and it launched right now, because I think it's like, oh man, that hype, that exciting moment. I feel like the longer this announcement goes by, it will kind of fade off. Recall Days Gone wasn't Sony's best-selling game. At first, it had a significant amount of issues on the PlayStation 4, and then the PlayStation 4 Pro kind of enhanced some of that feature set, made it a little bit smoother experience. But it wasn't until much later that they add in some of the challenge maps and flesh out some of the annoyances of the game that it did it really get in a really good state. Obviously, Bend went off to go do a live service game, which kind of fell flat on its face. Everybody wanted a Days Gone 2. I think this is Sony's olive branch to the fan base. I think if this game sells well, I think Days Gone 2 may be greenlit. I don't see Sony investing money in modernizing a game that isn't all that old to begin with for no return on investment. I think this is sowing the seeds. I think if this gets some good traction, I think Days Gone 2 is now a real possibility. I didn't feel that way prior to the state of play, but after seeing it, it's definitely something that I am very, very interested in for sure. The next game that I'm really excited for, even though I love to hate the Dark Pictures anthology, is Directive 8020. I'm a huge fan of the Dark Pictures franchise, despite having that whole debacle with Little Hope where they ate my save and I lost my progress and it genuinely pissed me off. I will say that in more recent installments, Dark Pictures has actually done a little bit better job of trying to modernize their engine. There are still some latency issues with some of the decision-making processes where the game is trying to figure out what it's supposed to be telling you. Some of the cutscenes don't necessarily make sense because a lot of the story elements don't seem to be fleshed out. But Directive 8020 does look like it's going to be a significantly more polished game. It definitely had more of an action feel to it. And I think the fact that we're moving away from the normal and entering into outer space and some future environment probably does this franchise a lot of good. And I'm excited for it. Obviously, they lost the voice of the curator. I'll be curious to see how that plays out going on in the future. I'm sure they're just going to do a quick substitution, but there was a common thread that was kind of flowing through the Dark Pictures anthology, and I'll be curious if Directive 8020 doubles down on that, or if this is an opportunity for them to kind of dismiss that and just focus on the single element, kind of like what they did with Until Dawn. So it remains to be seen. I don't really think I have much of an opinion on Dreams of Another. It just seems like a tech demo. Honestly, it didn't really wow me. The gameplay looks pretty boring. I like the idea of using a gun to kind of dematerialize and rematerialize things, but it just didn't really feel like a game that was really well thought out outside of like a tech demo. So I don't really know how I feel about that. The one that I am most excited for, I did a standalone video on it, and if we get into some sort of beta or some sort of additional technical alpha or more details, I will absolutely be covering it here on this channel. Hell Is Us. Outside of Monster Hunter, this is probably my most anticipated game of 2025. Recall that Hell Is Us is the game that doesn't give contextual clues. It kind of forces you to pay attention. And they showed off in the gameplay trailer before and a little bit more here that you're going to have to pay attention to what characters say. You're going to have to hone in on keywords, and you're going to have to be able to navigate the world on your own. Just like if you were going to the grocery store now, you wouldn't just look up in the sky and see the big Skyrim carrot telling you, hey, the grocery store is here. You'd have to use contextual clues to kind of navigate your way through the world. That's what this game promises to be. It speaks to somebody like me, an old timer who remembers those games, remembers the Elden Rings, like the Morrowind type adventure where you kind of had to pay attention to what you were doing. I like that in this, and I'm very, very excited for it. I thought this trailer was phenomenal, and it's already sold me. The fact that we now have a release date and probably some more information, maybe a collector edition at some point, I am absolutely stoked. I cannot wait to get my hands on that. Another DLC, super excited about, Lies of P Overture. Is going to be a prequel in Lies of P Overture, which is going to transport you back to Krat, however, before its collapse. We know that at the end of Lies of P, we got a really, really cool little tease of Dorothy, the whole Wizard of Oz kind of thing, and I'm stoked for what they do with that. I was hoping this would be that. It is not. This is a prequel, which takes place prior to the Puppet Frenzy, and I'm excited. Now, I played Lies of P on Xbox. I played it on Game Pass. I have since not renewed my Game Pass subscription, which means I will most likely buy Lies of P and beat it again so that I could play this DLC. But I love the game so much, I think it's a small price to pay. Lies of P was absolutely one of my top games when it came out, and I can't wait to get more into that world and more into that universe. And I just think I think it's in a really good place. We got to see more of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, I think the worst kept secret in the industry. Here we got finally a release date of August 28th. If you're like me, you already picked up the collector edition, which is going to have this little diorama kind of shadow box deal. I'm excited. I actually never played Metal Gear Solid 3 at all. I know the story. I've read it. I've watched gameplay. I've watched speed runs. I know everything about it. I just never actually have played it. So I'm looking forward to that fresh polish. I'm hoping maybe Konami sees the hype for this game and considers kind of going back to that franchise. I know Hideo Kojima is gone, but they still own the IP. And we haven't really seen much in the way of Konami lately from video games. The fact that they are coming into this is awesome. Very odd, they included a little Easter egg of sorts at the end of the trailer, which will be a mini game mode of Snake versus Monkey. I can't speak to what that is. I see it here on the text. I obviously saw the cinematic with a little monkey ball guy at the end. It's probably typical weird Konami nonsense, but okay, I'll take it. I just want the game. The fact that it's coming later in the year is good. It's going to give me a little more time to kind of adjust through the rest of my backlog. Monster Hunter Wilds already said goes without saying. They're already announcing that they're releasing some new content. They're going to announce some new monsters, that sort of thing. Doesn't really change a lot for me in terms of kind of what to expect for Monster Hunter. It's a day one purchase for me, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. Lastly, we got Onimusha. So the game is slated for 2026. We don't know. We are going to get a remaster of Onimusha 2 on PlayStation 5 and on PlayStation 4 later this year. So if you're curious about what the Onimusha franchise is, maybe I'll do a video on it at a later date. I don't know. But if you're curious about what the Onimusha franchise is, Samurai's Destiny is a great place to start. And I don't really think it has much to do with Way of the Sword, but I'm excited that Onimusha is back on the radar. I'm excited that it got a prominent feature inside of the State of Play, and I think that is awesome. Hot on the heels of Brent giving me a copy of Star Wars Jedi Survivor to play, it is going to be available on the PlayStation Premium catalog, along with a small other handful of games. I don't think anything really moved the needle for me there. And then they closed out with a couple other games here, racing. Yeah, nothing here I think that warrants anything. I think we'll have to wait and see. I think some of these games are really kind of wait and sees. They looked interesting, but it's kind of hard to say. One game that I'm going to gloss over now, because I actually bought, is Warriors Abyss. So I did pick that up. I played it last night until about 1:30 in the morning. So I am a bit tired, but expect a gameplay review on that soon. Overall, like I said, I think the State of Play was good. You know, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was groundbreaking. I could understand absolutely some people's frustration when it comes to State of Play, particularly in more of those first-party games. But recall that Sony did themselves a massive disservice under Jim Ryan, by the way. This was all under Jim Ryan still, by releasing games and announcing games way too early. We had like 4 E3s worth of content for The Last of Us Part 2. I'm glad, even though they teased Wolverine a couple years ago, I'm glad they don't have anything to show unless it's coming out, which it's clearly not, so don't focus on it. Instead, focus on the games that are coming out this year, and with the exception of like Onimusha, maybe one or the two other concept games in there, most of these games will hit store shelves by the end of the year, and I think this sets the pace for what to expect in 2025. When I talked about this a few nights ago during my Diablo 4 live stream, I talked a lot about how PlayStation needed to do a good job of selling the PlayStation 5 Pro. I don't think they did a good job of that here. I don't think there was enough to move the needle, and it worries me that PlayStation 5 Pro may become more of an afterthought than we had initially thought. It remains to be seen. But I will say that from a game perspective, I think they had a pretty good and pretty healthy collection of games. It ran long. There's a lot of great content in there, and I think it's something that if you're a fan of the Sony brand and you're a Sony pony like me, I think you're in a happy place right now. I know I am. That'll wrap up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.